So we just got back from Rocktober, and as you can imagine, what we were doing there was playing in a lot of rocks and using it as a good venue to test the underbody protection. These Radial cup protectors, they've definitely taken hammering. They've been on the vehicle for 4 years now, and if you guys follow our YouTube channel, you'll know exactly what we put these vehicles through. So this is a really good testament as to why you need them and how much damage these can take before they actually completely fall apart. The entire underbody protection has had a special amount of testing done to it due to the new front rail arms. So we've really been wanting to load test those guys and see exactly what they can take out in the wild. Obviously we do our factory testing here, but there's nothing like a real life simulation when you're bouncing off rocks and using them as sliders and just helping you get through obstacles. So we have been putting a lot of abuse through them, and obviously all the other underbody protection does take a hammering at the same time. So we'll go through each of these components and show you exactly where they're at and what they look like after all the abuse we put them through. The state of the actual Radial cups compared to what the Radial cup protectors look like is unbelievable. With this much damage, I would have expected to see at least a little nick or something on the Radial cup itself, but they're in factory condition. The state of these cups. So we have been asked the question quite a few times as to why we don't mount the Radial cups into the chassis. There's two reasons for it. One, we'd have to be drilling into the chassis, which I'm not a big fan of. We're also trying to protect the chassis as much as possible. The other is that, as you can see, the state of these Radial cups, if we had to drill it into the chassis and hit the rocks that we do hit, it doesn't matter what we'll put in there. The chassis is only 2 mils thick, it will get torn out. We'd much rather have the Radial cups protectors down and replace them and still have your Radial cups in good order than compromise any components on the chassis. In this trip, we've obviously been testing all the underbody, including the fuel tank. We actually did slip off a massive rock and land squarely on the fuel tank. So HDPE protector really does help a lot for keeping that tank still in one piece and keeping your fuel in the tank. We can see that there is slight denting and warping in the tank, but all the welds have held up, and this is why we pressure test them to 1 bar pressure before sending them for coating. So with this, the product obviously, it needs to be replaceable. Nothing's going to last forever. So our 12 mil HDPE plates does bolt on and bolt off. In the front here you've got 4 M8 nuts that you just unbolt. This whole plate slides forward and you put a new one on. Also on top of that, if you're wanting to drain the tank, we do have a sump plug at the bottom here, so once you slid the HDPE plate forward, you can get access to a drain plug, which is also a unique offering that our products offer that others don't. Looking where the tank also has managed to get damaged even in the higher parts is just a testament to the kind of rocks that we climb in that. And this is why we do the R&D research. We'll possibly be looking at adding another HDPE plate onto the smaller section, as well as maybe going for a slightly heavier duty mount for the carbon canister. But that's something we need to look into in the future and decide whether it is going to be a feasible project or not. The front diff protection's also taken quite a bit of a hammering, but you can imagine if that wasn't there, they'd be going directly into the soft outer housing of that front diff, which would probably mean that it would be touching your crown gear and creating a bit of havoc inside there. So It is crucial if you are wanting to push your vehicle to its limits. These items really are necessary, and I think this vehicle alone is a testament to security it will offer the vehicle and peace of mind. Our heavy duty Radial arms really has surprised us all, taking the absolute abuse and punishment that we've given it over the weekend, and everything's still straight in line and keeping the axle tracking true. So these are our upgraded Radial arms for up to 100 mm lift. So currently we're running your normal center caster bushes, and we're getting about 4.5 degrees of caster on our 50 mm lift. I'm actually really enjoying the higher caster. It tracks true, and it seems to limit the experience of the death wobble. These are also 12 mm longer than stock, which allows us to put the 31s on and miss the inside of the wheel arch when under full lock. You often use your Radial arms as rock sliders just due to the nature of them and the position. They do hang low and are in line with the lowest part of your diff. So as you are navigating rocky obstacles, often you can end up using them as a slider to try get a better line. The transfer box seems to be the one that's least touched. The reason for that is that with upgraded mounting arms allows us to actually mount the turtle shell onto the arm. So what happens here is as the vehicle or as the transfer box is making contact to rocks and the like, it allows it to actually push up and out the way. So the energy is getting sucked in through the transfer box mounts, which limits the amount of energy put into the transfer box itself and into the chassis. This allows the transfer box to move out the way and not get hammered, which is really what you want. You don't want your transfer box to be getting punished. So these rock sliders have been on this vehicle from the beginning, so they're also in the region of close to 4 years old. We utilize them as that. We often are bouncing off of rocks, sliding on rocks and dropping off hard onto rocks. So much so that we get a lot of spectators cringing when they hear that loud bang as we go down. But they always do their job. They protect the side saws perfectly. They protect the chassis well. They haven't let me down to date. So you can see all the battle scars on them. You can see how much they've been ground up on rocks and been used. But I did have a sad incident where a lady drove into the side of my vehicle. I didn't realize that I had been driven into until I went to wash the car and I saw she had left the paint behind. So yeah, not only is it protecting you from rocks, it is protecting you from drivers that aren't paying attention. So one of the key features on the design, which is often overlooked, is that we're using a U-cup system to cradle the chassis. This results in two things. We're getting a good support on the chassis and we're not having to drill into the chassis. But the other aspect is that you do have a slight bit of movement. So when you do experience a hard impact, the rock slider can flex up, which limits the amount of pressure that goes into the chassis. The other aspect is that if you do take a really hard knock on the chassis and the sliders are either welded into the chassis or bolted straight through the chassis, you do run the risk of twisting the chassis. It is only 2mm steel, although it's high quality steel. When you've got the cantilever effect of the rock slider sitting further away from the chassis, you can put tremendous amounts of force into that, especially if you're sliding off rock and coming into significant contact with the slider. On the weekend, I did slide off a rock sideways and straight into a boulder, and the rock slider not only protected the side stall, it also protected the door as it stopped the vehicle from sliding further into the rock. Thereafter, I just used the rock on the rock slider to pivot off of it. So they got multiple functions, and then obviously the addition of the step, which allows us to get access to the roof rack. It is a great feature. Another key feature on our diff protection is not only the dimple dies adding strength to the product, giving it great styling and looks, it also serves a purpose. It allows the diff protection to sit out just past or flush with the drain cap, which means that your drainage hole is protected and you won't find yourself having issues when it comes to draining the oil and having to try panel beat the protective ring around it out so you can get access to the bolt. So with our design of our crossmember, a key feature of it was for it to not hang any lower than the OEM one. The worst thing you want, or the worst thing you can do, is have a crossmember that's sitting lower than your other chassis components. As you can imagine, the further down that is, the easier it is to collect rocks. And once you collect a rock on that crossmember and you start putting force on it, it will easily start ripping and tearing off the brackets that's mounting it to the chassis. So what we've done is we've kept the same lowest point of the crossmember, utilizing the good styling of the OEM design. We've gone slightly thinner on the width of the tube, and got a cutout for the front prop shaft to be able to sag down without making contact onto the crossmember. On top of that, we do have extra reinforcements with the tubes that get drilled through and welded on. All of those holes are machined in on the CNC, as well as the cutout, which is machined in with the CNC. And we use a 2.5mm wall thickness for strength and rigidity. Even with how snug and tucked up our crossmember is, you can see it is still making contact with rocks in certain circumstances. So if this crossmember had to have been any lower down, it's going to be a point that's definitely going to hang you up. There's also going to be a point that's going to put a lot of strain into your chassis when it does make that contact with the rock. So the reason for the crossmember upgrade is purely with the 50mm lift or anything bigger, or when you're getting that additional droop, your front drive shaft is going to drop further down. So without this crossmember, if you're running the OEM crossmember, you'd end up having the crossmember rubbing on the drive shaft, which is not good for the drive shaft, the diffs, or the crossmember, or the transfer box for that matter. Functionality of the products that we want, we're all doing it for specific purposes, and that's to make a vehicle a more capable off-roader. So with our tow bars, they are 50mm higher than the tow bars that you're going to find at all your other tow bar manufacturers. With this, it gives us a better departure angle, and the gooseneck comes off quite easily. Even with this tow bar being so tucked up, with the obstacles that we choose to navigate or we choose to tackle, we still manage to collect rocks on these. So you could only imagine what state this would be under if it was 50mm lower down. We chose to incorporate our tow bar and bumper as one unit, where our bumper bolts onto our tow bar. The reason is not only the fact that we wanted to actually pull the tow bar up to give us better clearance, is that there's very limited real estate underneath the chassis. So if we're trying to mount our bumper on there with any other tow bar, and with a variety of tow bars out there, we would be fighting a losing battle. So we've opted to just go for all-in-one bumper with tow bar, and that way, you know, when you buy the product, they're going to work together and work well. Our bumpers also come with recovery points standard as a feature, so that way you don't have the temptation of using the tow ball, which is a complete no-no, to rescue anyone or to pull anyone out. So it's just another added feature and a complete design aspect to it. We have been asked before, why don't we have high lift jack points on our tow bar? The way we've designed this is that you can utilize the high lift jack onto the bow shackle to lift the vehicle up in each corner. We've used this in multiple instances, and it's just keeps a neater, cleaner look to the bumper. This weekend at Rocktober, we definitely had a lot of fun, and we threw all caution to the wind, and we found a secondary use for these ladders. It turns out that they work quite well as a rear door protector. Brad and Warwick can attest to that. They've got some really interesting shapes going on in their ladders at the moment. So yeah, it shows the abuse that the ladder can take as well. Not that it should be, but mistakes can happen, and when you trying to navigate tight obstacles and you're in a bit of a pinch, sometimes you have no choice but to use the bank. This also segues quite nicely into our rear bumper, the protection that we offer on the OEM lights, and the fact that the ladders can take that much damage with the bumper also burying itself into the bank and the lights coming out unscathed. There's nothing worse than going away and having a weekend of fun and coming back and having to replace OEM parts.